I never got into One Piece, or Bleach, or Dragon Ball for that matter. The very idea of investing in a show with thousands of episodes fills me with a sense of existential dread. Now, is that because my time is super important to me? No, probably not. I mean, I'm reading the Konosuba light novels right now. Clearly, I have some free time. No, in actuality, I think the thing that turns me off about these stories is the lack of an ending. I don't have much interest in tales that go on in perpetuity because the ending is oftentimes my favorite part. It's the emotional crescendo that makes the entire journey worth it. Whether that's the Master Chief finishing the fight in Halo 3, the Handler meeting the Undertaker in the 86, or Kraven's self-deletion at the end of his last hunt. These endings leave lasting impacts, even if they're undone or retconned later on by some tubby loser that thinks far too highly of himself. I love endings, and I think it's the lack of them that heavily contributes to the subpar state of modern entertainment. So what does this have to do with One Piece? Well, nothing really, at least not in relation to the live-action show, but this is my YouTube channel, and I'll complain about whatever I want.
Whatever, I do what I want.
Now then, I may never watch the One Piece anime for the reasons stated above, but I am willing to give the live-action adaptation a chance because the cast of this show will be turned to dust long before they can adapt the whole series. Meaning, I'm fairly confident there will be some kind of an ending for me to look forward to. But this begs the question, how is the journey so far? Well, as the title suggests, it's pretty cringe, but it does mean well. And I really want to dig into that statement because I don't think cringe necessarily means bad. For example, there's no realm of reality where putting this on my screen doesn't make my bones shake like RuPaul eating a corn dog. Buggy's look is heinous, but he's actually a really fun character. He grew on me despite looking like a dipshit, and I don't think this is that controversial of a statement, but people love cringe. After all, I am reliably informed that people actually enjoy watching The Office. But what differentiates good cringe from the really stinky cringe? I wish I had a clever and succinct way to put it without sounding too cliche, but I don't. Really, it's just one of those things that you know when you see it. This is of course vague, but I am happy to elaborate. An English novelist by the name of Samuel Butler said that every man's work, whether it be literature or music or pictures or anything else, is always a portrait of himself. In other words, you can see who someone is through their work, and in the case of One Piece, you can see that everyone involved loves what they're doing. You can see it in the show, and you can see it in their interviews. These guys are fans, and they couldn't be happier to be a part of this show. This goes a long way towards endearing the audience, and it was clips of those interviews that convinced me to check out the show in the first place. It was refreshing after seeing so many actors bitch and complain about toxic fans over the years. This next bit is loosely based around the Critical Drinker's 5 Steps to Killing a Show, so it's fitting that Cowboy Bebop is such an excellent point of comparison. As I implied just a moment ago, the cast and crew of One Piece haven't intentionally done anything to antagonize their fan base. They're just stoked to be there, unlike Daniela Pineda when she went out and got all in her purse about her appearance.
First, I wanted to apologize to the fans that I did not anatomically match the Faye Valentine character. 6 foot, double D size breast, 2-inch waist. You know, they looked everywhere for that woman and they couldn't find her. It's kind of weird. So they just went with my short ass.
Interesting choice.
That's certainly one approach, but it's far more endearing to hear Emily Rudd talk about how much she liked things like Sailor Moon growing up and how excited she is to play Nami. To my knowledge, she has yet to sarcastically apologize for her boobs not making up 90% of her body weight, and that's probably because no reasonable person expects that out of her. The same could have been said for Daniela if she had approached the situation with any level of humility or good faith. The other step I wanted to touch on besides antagonizing the fans is the act of updating the story for a modern audience. Now, as I've established, I'm no expert on the source material, but there's a few bits I picked up on. For one, there's a distinct sense of morality and no real attempts to subvert it. One of the first lessons Luffy learns is that it's just as important for a man to be strong as it is for him to be good. Nobody tells him he's the reason society sucks or that he should contribute to the suicide rate. And beyond that scene, there are several excellent portrayals of masculinity. Luffy himself has a distinct sense of morality, and he inspires the people around him. It's a simple concept, but one that I find lacking in a lot of other Western media. Nami is also a great example. To start, she's probably the first and last red-headed character that Netflix will adapt faithfully, but beyond that, she's a character that actually embraces her femininity. It's one of her primary strengths, and she frequently leverages it to get what she wants. Whether that's appearing helpless to steal a boat from some pirates or flirting with some guy to get information. She doesn't apologize for being attractive, and she's not perfect either. She'll sell out her friends if it means meeting her goal, and she has a few chips on her shoulder that get addressed throughout the series. I honestly didn't think characters like that could even exist anymore, but I'm happy to have been proven wrong. This pretty much concludes my thoughts on the modern audience, but while we're talking about the characters, I want to mention Zorro. Zorro, on paper, is what an edgy 12-year-old would think is cool, and I thought I was going to hate him, but I was wrong. Zorro's awesome, and he gets most of the show's best lines. A lot of that credit is owed to the man portraying him, despite faltering a bit early on. I think after the first episode, he really settles into the role and his comedic timing improves considerably. Speaking of comedy, the jokes in this show land pretty well. Luffy's stealth rating, the existence of Captain Morgan, and Zorro's one-liners all elicited at least a smile from me, if not an outright chuckle. The writing in general is also solid. There's a lot of meaningful setups and payoffs along the way, and the show does reward you for paying attention. Finally, it's refreshing to see competent villains and not just a bunch of total morons like any of Marvel's recent offerings. Okay, those are all of my rapid-fire alibis. I could spend a lot of time discussing the measurable reasons this show works for me, but that's not what we're here to talk about. So back to my point about Cringe. And I think I've made a decent case for why this show is resonating with people and why it's had such a positive reception. There's a clear sense of authenticity and a palpable feeling of respect towards the source material. Now that just leaves why others have failed. So what's truly cringe, and I do mean the stinky kind, is the narcissistic notion that someone can take a beloved property and somehow fix it. Of course, this notion is offensive to fandoms. Of course it is. It's offensive because they don't believe that their favorite IPs are fundamentally flawed. At least not at their core. I mean, any sane person can find fault in what they love. Marriage exists after all. But my point is that fans will be the first to admit that Faye's outfit isn't very practical or that Luffy's superpowers would look goofy as hell in live action. But none of that matters. That's not what makes the cringe good or bad. That's not what makes an adaptation good or bad. What really matters is the intention behind it, its spirit. That's why the Lord of the Rings movies are so beloved, even now. The changes made to the story were done so thoughtfully and without any sort of ideologies in mind. I feel confident in saying the same about One Piece. Well, minus a pretty clumsy race allegory with the fishmen, but nobody's perfect, and slavery seems to have been heavily explored in the manga based off of a cursory Google search, so that doesn't feel too far away from the source material to me. Truth be told, I had a great time watching this show. The previously mentioned moment of allegory was really the only thing that dragged me out of this world that they'd crafted and into the current year. These days, that's an accomplishment. Now before I hit my outro, I just want to leave you guys with one thought. Cringe, the good kind at least, is a symptom of authenticity. Authenticity is a facet of vulnerability, and vulnerability is having the courage to be imperfect. It's through this courage that art is born. Basically, art is cringe, and that's not always a bad thing. As always, thanks for watching the video, especially if you made it to this point. So, since you're here, I'll give you guys a quick update in case you didn't see my community posts. Recently, I got demonetized for a joke regarding trench coats and a hit song by Foster the People. So that's a bummer. I've yet to pursue something like Patreon, but I'll let you guys know if I do. Also, I'm still plugging away at my Covenant breakdown, but it's a bit of a chonker at my current skill level, and it's definitely taken me a while. Rest assured, I have no intention of abandoning the project. Lastly, I'm currently in school for journalism, so don't be surprised if I start tackling more current events. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.